Welcome to Inspiring Women with Laurie McGraw. I am your host, Laurie McGraw. I have spent the past 30 years in leadership, and over the years, I've come to learn one thing. Women need women, and not just any women, but inspiring women. Tune in every week to hear from women at the pinnacle of their careers and from others who are just starting out. Episodes can be found at inspiringwomen.show or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening, and I hope you will be inspired. This is Inspiring Women, and I am Laurie McGraw. I'm really pleased this morning to be speaking with Dr. Sonya Sloan. Now, Dr. Sloan is an orthopedic surgeon. She's a traveling orthopedic surgeon who has been in medicine for some years. She also describes herself as a health equity disruptor and as one of only 100 female African-American orthopedic surgeons. She's obviously broken some barriers and has quite a bit of passion to do more than just medicine. Dr. Sloan, thank you for being on Inspiring Women.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Laurie.
All right, well, let's get started. There is so much going on in the world of medicine today and what's happening with physicians and being one of few. And I want to talk about things like burnout and all of those things. But before we dive in, what are you doing right now, Dr. Sloan? What does your day-to-day look like in your practice and your work efforts?
Okay, so not today specifically because I'm being supermom today. We have a house full of kids and it's this, summertime and it's having friends over and the pool parties and all that kind of stuff. But when I'm not being mom, I am an orthopedic surgeon that travels. I actually have a contract for the past 5 years with the Indian Health Services. So I'm on the Navajo Nation reservation on the Four Corners. So New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, and Arizona. And it has been a privilege, especially through COVID, the global pandemic, to take care of the Navajo Nation and other Indian tribes during this time. And then when I'm not there, traveling ortho, I'm a first lady, which is within the African American church. That's the wife of a pastor. We have a mega church here on the north side of Houston, the Luke, and we're about 5,000 members. So I help with our health ministry here. And then I have several nonprofits that I started along with my book, The Rules of Medicine. So yeah, just a little this and that.
A little this and that. So, a lot of this and that, I think is probably better. So why don't we start with medicine in terms of, what drew you to that? So you have many passions that you are pursuing actively every single day, in addition to being super mom. But, what drew you to medicine, those early days that thought, this became an important thing, and specifically orthopedic surgery, just given the statistics where there's so few, both females as well as it is the least diverse of the specialties out there.
I grew up in a small town, Denison, Texas, North Texas, right on the Red River. My mom was a nurse. I watched my mom put herself through school as well as she worked 2 jobs. So that strong woman image was always present with me. I saw her. I got to pin her when she became an RN. She still worked to get her master's degree as I'm finishing high school. But I was very active: gymnast, cheerleading, basketball, volleyball. I ran track, and I hurt my knee playing or running track, hitting the hurdles. And so I was always in the hospital, but I was very present to me that there was no African-American doctors, no women physicians that I ever met when I was in Denison, Texas. So the idea that you could be one, I never saw one. So I didn't know it was possible. But my mom was of that push of, if you want to, you can't. You just have to put your mind to it. And so after the injury, Dr. Black was his name, phenomenal orthopedic surgeon, gentle spirit, great bedside manner, and was like, you should go into ortho. After this knee injury, you know a lot, the physical therapy side, the injection side, bracing, everything that it would really take, and we need more diversity. And that was probably the first time I heard the word diversity when it came to medicine. And growing up in a small town just went over my head, never thought about it again. But going to Texas Tech and realizing it was not very diverse, but knew that I wanted to go into orthopedic surgery early on and started that road. Somewhere I got a little distracted by my husband and And I came home and I got waitlisted to Rush in Chicago to go to medical school. So I called myself being angry at God, which I would not advise. And lo and behold, I told my parents I was going to move to New Jersey and work for Johnson & Johnson as a chemistry major. I had that degree and worked with organic chemistry, large molecules. And they said, well, let's talk about this. So we said, let's go to a coffee house and sit down and talk about it. East Coast, West Coast coffee houses were booming. You know, Starbucks was hitting the scene big time. And so when I came home to small town USA, we had nothing. We had an IHOP, we had a kettle, and we had like a small little, you know, diner that was privately owned, but no coffee houses. And there was a large Austin College University. There was a junior college there. So I was like, why can't we just open a coffee house? And so with being on a wait list to go to medical school, I started my first job, my entrepreneurship at age 23, borrowed $50,000, wrote a business plan, learned how to write a business plan, and started this venture that eventually would help me later on as far as being a businesswoman and entrepreneur as well.
Okay. Wait a minute. This journey is something else. So, okay, I'm going into medicine. I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I get waitlisted. I'm now a coffee shop entrepreneur. And
yes.
that is incredible. And by the way, I'm a big plug for IHOP. That's what put me through college. So you start this coffee shop. And so what happens there but you obviously went on to medical school to become an orthopedic surgeon. So was this just a sort of, stop on the way, or, was medicine always the key endpoint that you were looking for, or was everything just a journey as it unfolded?
My motto in life is, if you want to hear God laugh, make a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's exactly what happened. Getting waitlisted allowed me to enjoy falling in love, experiencing travel. And then this whole entrepreneurship sort of caught up with me, and not knowing that I was a natural, if that's a term for being an entrepreneur, is either you love it or you don't. And I loved it. And so I got into UTMB in Galveston the next year. So about a year and a half later. So my parents continued the business for another year or so, about almost 3 years. And then we sold the business, made a little bit of money to pay off some student loans. And then unbeknownst to me, maybe 6 months later, Starbucks came into the very spot where we were.
Wow. Okay.
So talk about, oh my God, what was I thinking? It was that, and they're still in that location. So I was on to something, but timing is everything. So off to medical school, UTMB Galveston. And it was hard. It was hard, not because it wasn't the learning process. It was taking in all of that information, and then worrying about other things and trying to still be present in who I was. And I was still growing up. I was 23 years old, so it was a lot. It was definitely a lot.
Well, let's talk about that career, sort of through medical school to then becoming the practicing physician that you are now. 30,000 orthopedic surgeons in terms of the specialty. As mentioned, it is, it is the least number of women in that specialty, and is notably the least diverse specialty that's out there. 600 African-American physicians within the specialty. And again, 100 of those African-American physicians are women, you being one. So while diversity was a new concept, new word to you back when Dr. Black mentioned it, how you must have felt it, I'm assuming, as you went through the ranks and residencies and to become the physician you are today. Give us some perspective there.
Would I do it again? I would question that, because of the, the fortitude that you have to continue going through residency. Being an only woman and being the only Black woman is very, very daunting, very, very daunting. I learned a lot. I learned how to be a team player. I learned how to stand up for myself. I learned to be a better surgeon because I was very much watched, monitored, and criticized. In that sense, it's made me a better surgeon. It's made me a better woman. But at the same time, at that young age, and that idea that you're part of a family and you're part of a team, unbeknownst to you, you're actually on the outskirts because you don't look like them and you are not a man as well. And it was still very much a boys' club in 2000 up to 2006. And even today, as you said, there's only a few of us. And so that does not relay or does not convert when you're applying. You're just excited to get in. And so even looking at the new residents that just came in and helping them doing something what we call a boot camp, it's making them understand, yes, you are now in. However, you still have to work your ass off to get what you want, you know?
Well, you said the words, being watched and criticized. So just, I don't need to probably make too much of a leap to appreciate what that really means in terms of being in the moment while still needing to every day prove yourself, even though you're excelling at, obviously to make it in that field, that has to be what your experience was. So what gave you the strength? And this is, in those moments where you were unfairly being questioned, watched, criticized, whatever the situation might have been, how did you sort of persevere, draw on whatever you needed to draw on to, persevere?
Ironically, there's two things. One is my spirituality, as a praying woman, as a woman of faith that believes that all things work together, but also that for such a time as this, you've been placed in a certain place in time to do something and to make an impact. And I believe that it was not giving up on that belief and or dream. And then secondly, ironically, sports, what got me into orthopedics, the injury itself, taught you a lot as far as being a team player, how to continue working hard, how to push yourself when you really can't go any further. That mentality of an athlete definitely helped as far as finishing and completing and being competitive and not saying I'm going to give up, but pushing myself even harder.
Yeah, and we're at the 50th anniversary of Title IX, the work that was done to allow for equal opportunity for girls in sports. And so, just as a product of that, that's been such a wonderful thing that's happened in terms of sports and what that's meant to just the development and advancement of women. Let's talk more about physician burnout. Okay, so you're drawing on your spirituality. That's obviously an enormous part of who you are and important in your life and life outlook. But as a physician, just, we know that there are just ridiculous amounts of physician burnout. Now we're seeing incredible circumstances of violence against physicians. You and I had just corresponded over email after the horrific Tulsa mass shooting, where a physician was targeted and killed in that shooting.
An orthopedic surgeon.
An orthopedic surgeon.
Phillips, yeah.
And so Dr. Sloan, just, I guess, one thing is just like, how are you doing today, in the world of medicine, given all of these additional pressures, the burnout, the now new, perhaps newer violence against physician? How are you coping today? Are you drawing on the same things? Are you coping? How are you doing?
So today, it sort of marks the week. And so really sad. I'm still very, very tearful. I actually had met Dr. Preston Phillips years ago at the academy. Wonderful man. And being a few of we call them ourselves the 1.5, we're the 1.5% or the less than 2% African Americans in the country. So we're on a WhatsApp chat and we talk daily. And so this morning, someone sent a video that the family had put together. It was a private thing. And it was tearful because life lived and gone too soon, And so then the other request was life goes on because, Dr. Phillips was actually going to be in Africa next month doing joint replacements for, a community that was looking forward to this. And these patients have been scheduled and they've gone through all the rigors of being ready for this surgery. And now he's not coming. And so we're collectively, the body of orthopedic surgeons in the country are trying to find people that could go to replace him in honor of him. So it's hard to be in this place. And especially when you see it was a Black man that was an orthopedic surgeon, to get to where he wasn't easy. So it's tearful, it's remorseful. And I say you have to be where you are, because if not, then you don't process things and it does add up. And that does contribute to the burnout that so many of us are experiencing at this point, specifically after and or during, we're still in it, COVID, to watch so many die. And we transitioned in less than 2.5 years from being the heroes as doctors and nurses to now almost being the villains. And so it's really, really disheartening, and somewhat concerning, because you understand that medicine is still a business, and medicine is about money. It's about the bottom dollar. And so that's why I think so many of us have become more disenfranchised for our love and passion of medicine. It's the bureaucracy that we're dealing with today that's causing the burnout.
You have just personally things that you draw on to maintain a level of energy or excitement about the profession? Are you finding yourself becoming more disenfranchised with the world of medicine as a physician? What are you thinking about these days, just personally?
I believe I'm still hopeful. I'm an eternal optimist in the sense of, there's got to be something, there's got to be a way we can still impact. And so I'm looking at the medical students, I'm looking at nursing students and PA students and residents, and the ones that are now on the path that I was 20 years ago, to say, how can they make a difference? And then of course, my go-to is always Rule 34, pay it forward. How can I help them become a better me earlier? What can I give you that's going to instill in you the wherewithal to be successful in medicine and make a difference, and then give back? That's where I am right now.
Okay. And, medicine is just one aspect, one important aspect of who you are and what you focus on. You mentioned that you'd self-describe as a health equity disruptor. And again, going back to Dr. Black, while diversity was a new to you in the Wayback Machine, it certainly isn't new to anyone now. So let's talk a little bit about health equity in terms of why that's important to you and what you're focused on there.
So I'm the vice president of the Black Women's Orthopedic Surgeons Organization. And in that, recently there was an executive order that 45 had put out before he left office. And that executive order was basically reversing diversity, equity, inclusion in any government facilities. And so I was part of a group that we wrote a response to that, which was actually help to turn over that executive order when the next president and our new vice president came into office. So it was reversed, and there were several letters that were part of that. But it was one of the passions of, if I don't stand up, if I don't say something, if I don't put it in writing, then it was like I just took it. And so for me, it means that it's my watch right now. If it was the 50s or 60s and it was a civil rights movement or whatever else, my place, my time, my here and now is currently medicine, and making sure the things that can possibly help increase the numbers of African Americans and minorities in medicine. And then also that diversity has been correlated to better clinical care for patients that look like me. So I have to stand up. I have to speak up at this point, because if I don't, it's like I'm not doing anything. And then what was the point of my whole journey?
Well, it's an important journey, and those studies are well documented in terms of just the outcomes that improve when patients see physicians who are more demographically aligned with them. You work today with the Indian Health Service, so that is a population that certainly does not have the best outcomes out there. Let's talk about your work there and why that population is so important for you to work with.
It's very humbling. When I say I also have a medical clinic in Haiti, and I liken the two because of the disparities that are there, but also almost the lack of hope. There's a hopelessness there because the funds or the mentality and the energy that is there is also almost desperate. And so in going in, you're not just openly welcomed, you're an outsider to them. And so they are still very, very guarded people, tribes that do not bode well with outsiders. And so the continuum of me being there over this past 5 years, I only go 7 to 10 days out of the month, but now I have treated 3 generations. I've treated the mom, the child, and the grandmother. I've treated families and people in the hospital and in other communities. And so that has given me almost the feel of a full-time practice, but more so it's an honor to be part of that practice. And then learning things that are not normal, or I shouldn't say normal, learning things that are not traditional medicine. So of course there's a medicine man, and then there's two different types of medicine man. And then how you approach a patient that has a fracture for me is different, because it's not just like, okay, we're going to fix this and we're going to schedule you for surgery, yada, yada, yada. They don't believe in implants. They don't want things in their body. They don't believe that they can go to their spiritual God in the end with this in their body and be accepted. They want to try their forms of medicine, everything from what we call manipulation to different types of ceremonies that would render them healed. And that translates in almost every religion and spiritual denomination that we have today on earth. So I respect that, but I learned so much, and it's an honor to be there and be part of that.
How does that mix or not mix with, what might be considered evidence-based medicine or things that you've learned? How do you incorporate those differences into your practice?
I think it definitely helps with me being the wife of a preacher, a spiritual being myself, an understanding and being respectful. You have to be respectful in treating anybody in any aspect of medicine, to include the patient. I used to laugh when I first started medicine was, we had the baby boomers and older generations when I worked at the VA here in Houston. It was okay, doc, whatever you say. And then now you have the generation of the WebMD Google doctors that basically come in and tell you what they want, how they want it, when they want it, then how much they're going to pay, right? And then you have a generation that's sort of in between there. And that's the population of patients that do the best, because not only are they willing to accept your knowledge and your foundation and your background, but also trust you as a partner in their healthcare. You also have the patients that want to be involved in their healthcare. And so that's what it's going to take to be successful. And we're at a brink of those generations sort of crossing lines and blurring the lines to the newer generation that's pretty much just web-based and virtual at this point. So I'm not sure where we're at as far as long-term outcomes with medical care and how we transition over, but I definitely believe technology is part of it.
Well, I also think just the words you're using of respect and humbling and just being, how to incorporate those things into the care delivery that you're providing is just really, it's inspiring to hear it, quite frankly. So Dr. Sloan, as we sort of close out here, I'd like to just turn just a little bit to some of the other things that you do. I mean, with all of the work in your practice, you've talked about a little bit about your church, which is clearly very, very important to you, but you're also an incredibly strong advocate for women, more women in STEM. So maybe just a little bit about those pursuits. First of all, how do you find the time? And then also, why do you follow all these different passions, or where do you find the energy, perhaps is a better question, to follow all these passions?
I think mostly if you say, what's your mission in life? Every person should have their own mission in life. And so my mission is, if it's not medicine, if it's not a spiritual, then it's definitely the educational side of more minorities. And so anything that I do pretty much falls into those categories. So right now, like my Sloan STEM plus arts, it's specifically to increase the number of minority students that are going to go into STEM fields, STEM careers, because we know that is going to correlate with financial sustainability for another generation of African-American kids. And there's only 9% of African Americans that are in the STEM fields, but we know that technology, science, engineering, math, all of that, medicine has increased over almost 100-fold in the past 20 years. But yet the number of African Americans going into that and/or minorities is still very, very low. So that's a passion for me. Specifically, I can have kids from our church. Our first year, I think we did almost 200 children for a week STEM camp, just that exposure, and for people that look like them, as well as it was financially affordable for the parents, because I've done some of the larger tech camps for my own kids and it's not cheap, so the idea of having something that's not just the early exposure, something that's financially feasible, as well as having those mentors that look like you and can talk to you on your level and be respectful, it changes the game as far as long-term output. The other thing was, I fell into it, the entrepreneur thing, and realized that I had a lot of the skills to help other women. So through our church, we always would have different seminars and or, meetings. And I saw that women needed more, just as you did through this podcast, was how can I help women be inspired and motivated? And so starting Me and We, called Motivating and Empowering Women to Excel, was specifically to help women financially, spiritually, and physically. It's like when we talked about these different things. But what I found in the end was, to take it to the next level, women had hopes and dreams that had never been nurtured or mentored or pushed, and specifically minorities. And so it was like, how can I help you start this business that is a passion for you? It may be a book, it may be a nonprofit, it may be just a small organization that you don't even want to formalize. But, over the past 10 years, I've helped about 100 women be that basic entrepreneur like I was so many years ago, and teaching them how to do a business plan. How do you market? How do you get onto social media? What does it look like to brand yourself? And how do you network and be collaborative with other organizations that are doing what you do, so you don't have to do all of the work and reinvent the wheel? And it has been phenomenal to watch women just blossom. And then again, I go back to Rule 34, pay it forward. When you're done and doing what you're doing, make sure you help somebody else, another woman, do exactly what you've done.
Well, that is an incredible list. I mean, Rule 34, I can't even imagine what Rule 1 through 33 is, but you're very, very committed to that one for certain. Dr. Sloan, as we close out here on Inspiring Women, I mean, there is so much that you are both passionate about, but then clearly extraordinarily active in making something happen, in particular for others and serving others. It's just clear that is your mission in life. But as we close out on today's discussion, I just love any last advice you might give to perhaps younger women who are just starting out as they pursue their own career journeys.
Two things. Be unapologetic. Do not go into, our society has taught us, and media has taught us, to quiet down or to put our ideas, beliefs, dreams, hopes, aspirations on the back burner. No, just say no to that and move ahead and be unapologetic in moving ahead and who you are. And then secondly, it's the age-old question, can women have it all? And I say, yes, you can have it all. It doesn't come all at once. It may come in time. It may come in, spurts. It may come in different segments of your life, but in different phases, you can have it all. And you make what is important to you at that time in your life, put it in the forefront. And those are the things you focus on. And then you never know whatever season, the next season in your life will bring those other things to you. But go for what you want. And I think you can have it all.
Well, Dr. Sloan, I think you may, in fact, be the poster child for you can indeed have it all. This has been an excellent Inspiring Women conversation. I have been speaking to Dr. Sonya Sloan. Dr. Sloan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
This has been an episode of Inspiring Women with Laurie McGraw. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We are produced by Kate Cruz at Executive Podcast Solutions. More episodes can be found on inspiringwomen.show. I am Laurie McGraw, and thank you for listening.